Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for a program preview for the Master of Science in Innovation and Venture Development. MSIVD is a brand new master's program that's starting at ASU this fall through a partnership between the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering, W.P. Carey School of Business, and the Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts. My name is Jackie, and I'm the graduate coordinator for the MSIVD program. I work with students for this program through the admissions process and as an academic advisor. I want to start off by just quickly going over an agenda of what we will be discussing with you today. In just a few moments, I will be introducing you to our program director, Cheryl Heller, as well as our guest speaker today, one of our advisors to the MSIVD program, Chris Clark. He is going to be talking to you about your transformative venture and why he feels that the MSIVD will be a transformative program. Towards the end, I will speak briefly about the admission requirements and what you can expect from the application process for the program, as well as some information about the program cost. And then we do expect to have some time at the end for a Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation for myself or Cheryl or Chris Clark, please feel free to leave them in the Q&A portion of the Zoom webinar, and we will be sure to get to all of your questions towards the end. So we are joined today by Cheryl Heller, our program director. If you have any questions for her about the MSIVD program, like I said, please feel free to leave them in the Q&A, and she will be here with us at the end to answer any questions that you may have. But right now, I would like to introduce you to our speaker today, Dr. Chris Clark. He is a researcher on teaching, professor emeritus of educational psychology, and a founding executive board member of the International Study Association on Teachers and Teaching. He's taught and mentored graduate students at Stanford University, Michigan State University, Columbia University, the University of Toronto, University of Alberta, the University of Delaware, and Arizona State University. He was a co-director of the academic program of the USAID-funded India Support for Teacher Education program, hosted by the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College in 2013. And he was a Fulbright Research Fellow in Israel and has served as a keynote speaker and guest lecturer at universities in Switzerland, Canada, Turkey, Norway, Taiwan, Ireland, and Israel. Chris has taught online since 2006, and we are so excited to have him as one of our advisors to the MSIVD program for our inaugural cohort. So now I will go ahead and turn it over to Chris.
Hello, everyone. These are not normal times. You're being asked to find your way in a world in the middle of a devastating pandemic and a terrible recession. These words were addressed to the class of 2020 by President Barack Obama on May 16th, 2020. These words also describe you and your situation, finding your way in conditions that none of us have experienced. Today, I have a short story for you. This story shows how joining the first cohort of the ASU Masters in Innovation and Venture Development is a smart move. It's an even smarter move today than it was last month. One of our neighbors here in the Valley of the Sun is called Taliesin West. Perhaps you have heard of it or even taken a tour. Taliesin West was started by Frank Lloyd Wright in 1937 as the winter home of his School of Architecture. Like all accredited schools of architecture, this school taught a curriculum that is standardized. After all, you would want your licensed architect to master strength of materials, site preparation, drainage, strong foundation, rendering clear and precise drawings, taking account of local climate and zoning regulations and more, no matter where she did her training. Beyond the standard architecture curriculum, there were unique, innovative ways that Wright organized learning. One of them foreshadows what ASU offers in venture development. When Wright and his students arrived in Scottsdale, Arizona, they were greeted by 620 acres of rough, undeveloped Sonoran desert land. The 1937 cohort lived in canvas tents for months. Their class project was building Taliesin West from the ground up. They used materials from the desert like giant boulders in creative ways. Wright himself designed the main buildings, but much fine-tuning and tons of labor remained to be done. Studios, dining facilities, meeting rooms, and a road into the property were hewn out of raw desert, all using student labor. A well was dug, pipes were laid. All projects were required to meet Wright's unique aesthetic standards. Over several winters, much of what we see today rose up. Students still lived in tents. In about year 3, Wright added a brilliant change to the curriculum. Henceforth, each architecture student would design and build their own shelter on the property, replacing rustic tents with distinctive one-person living spaces. Each aspiring architect would do site selection, a full set of drawings, obtain building permits, assemble materials from right on the property or from suppliers in Phoenix. With classmates' help, each designer would grade the site, mix concrete, erect beams, orient the entrance and windows, raise the roof, account for proper drainage, and furnish a living area that would house them in comfort and safety for multiple winter seasons, all within a modest budget. And it had to look cool and keep the scorpions out. Designing, building, and living in your own shelter is an unforgettable way to learn to be an architect. Taliesin students did not merely learn about architecture. While still in school, they actually completed their first commission. They learned by doing. They learned teamwork by helping classmates make their visions real. More importantly, they lived inside their mistakes. They had to figure out how to remedy their freshman errors, still within budget. And next winter, when they returned to Arizona, the problems that remained, and perhaps new ones, would still disturb their sleep. The ASU Masters in Innovation and Venture Development offers a special opportunity to build your own venture and to live in it, night and day, for a year. You will learn about venture development, and while still in school, you will develop a venture on your own, along with a small team of talented classmates. You will have wonderful ideas, half of which prove impractical. Your budget will be too small. Your timeline will be too optimistic. Your aspirations, at first, will be too grand. Some of you will feel like the little red hen. All of you will be transformed. In times of great uncertainty, you will get better at staying calm and clear-headed, better at seeing from the viewpoint of others, better at reframing problems as opportunities, better at listening to your clients and to your peers, better at followership as well as leadership. 1 year from now, all of you will be tired. Most of you will be happier. All of you will have made the world a better place in spite of challenging times. You will have found your way. So welcome to an unforgettable, transformative year. We are eager to meet you and to see what you will build. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing that with us. Folks, if you have not been to Taliesin West in Scottsdale, I highly recommend it. It is a beautiful space to take a tour of. So I really appreciate hearing about that from you today. So I do want to take just a few minutes to talk to everybody about the application requirements for the MSIVD program. If you are planning to apply, you will need to provide a copy of your undergraduate transcripts. ASU does allow students to submit unofficial copies of transcripts via the online application. So if you have access to your unofficial undergraduate transcripts, we do recommend submitting those at the time that you apply. If you are an international student and you are looking to meet the English proficiency requirement, one recommendation that I have right now would be to look at the Duolingo English test for English proficiency. It is a test that ASU has recently started accepting to assist students who may be dealing with testing center closures due to COVID-19. And we did actually just recently receive notification that ASU has extended the time that they will accept the Duolingo English test. So that is still an option for students looking to meet that requirement. The other two things that you need in order to complete the initial online application are a copy of your resume, as well as a letter of intent. The letter of intent is going to be your first opportunity to introduce yourself to the MSIVD faculty, to talk about why you're interested in this program and what you hope to accomplish. They want to hear about what you are passionate about and what brought you to this program. It should be no more than 3 pages double spaced, but it is where they will look to initially get to know you. And then if your application is accepted to move on to the next stage in the process, we will contact you with some additional questions and to schedule a brief online interview before a final admission decision is made. We do have a deadline coming up on June 30th. So we do encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to submit your application by that deadline to be considered for fall. The link at the bottom of this screen will take you to our MSIVD webpage where you can find a link to start the application. And then I also did want to cover some information about the tuition and fee structure for this program. The graphic on this screen will give you a breakdown of the estimated cost for the 1-year program, broken down by your residency classification. So it's a 1-year, 30 credit hour program. And you can see that the cost will be ASU's base tuition and fees, in addition to a program fee of $4,000 per semester. And that $4,000 per semester is a flat fee regardless of your residency status. We do mention that this is a STEM designated program. So if you're looking for scholarship and funding opportunities, we do encourage you to look at those particular programs that are geared towards students in STEM programs. The STEM designation does also offer additional benefits to international students, as well as additional benefits to veteran students. So we do have some time now for a Q&A. I think I did see a couple of questions already, but if you have a question and you have not had a chance to put it in, please do enter it into the Q&A portion of the presentation, and we will go ahead and get to those.
Jackie, I just wanted to take a minute to thank Chris and to tell people who are listening that Chris has been a really, he's been our greatest source of wisdom in developing this program, and a really precious resource, because he thinks not only about the innovation process and what it takes to launch a venture, but he helps us think about how to create the conditions for success for students and how to adapt to the world in its current state, and how we can structure a community and support a community so that they can produce the best they've ever done. So thank you, Chris. And I think there's some questions that are similar to the ones I would ask, and I'll let Jackie take it back.
I just have a little tip for your application essay, which is if you mention Frank Lloyd Wright, it'll probably help.
Thank you for that. Okay, let me take a look at our questions here. So first off, I have a question for you, Chris. Can you tell us about your history as a builder and innovator, and what were your biggest lessons learned?
Great question. Oh, this is from Brent Siebold. He's a troublemaker. My history as a builder and innovator. What I would claim as a builder and innovator is that I've been part of, and later in my career, been a leader in building learning communities. So it's not physical structures, it's not companies or enterprises, but it's ways and contexts in which people who are initially strangers to one another become something closer, something more powerful and connected to one another than was the case on day one. Let me get back to the printed version of the question, see if I'm answering all of it. So that's and the innovation part of that isn't so much doing, it's a 50-50 mix of doing things that were invented a long time ago, but we forgot them in our cultural drive to embrace that which is new and different. We have left behind a lot of good stuff that John Dewey invented 100 years ago, for example, or Maria Montessori invented 120 years ago. So part of my invention work is a repurposing or a reminding of all of us coming together in this nascent learning community that there's some good things that always worked but went out of style. And if we can retool these for today's conditions, it's no fail fudge. It's a pretty good recipe. My biggest lesson learned, that's the final part of Brent's question. I'm pulling this out of the air, of course. But my biggest lesson learned is that every student wants to succeed. Nobody goes into a learning environment or an employment environment wanting to fail. And so the challenge for all of us is to help rearrange the conditions so that every student does succeed. And it's going to take different conditions and different adjustments of the requirements, so to speak, and the constraints and opportunities to see to it that everyone does succeed. And so I think that's the biggest general lesson. It applies to every situation in which I'm involved, and it's not an impossible charge. It's kind of simple. Does that answer it, Brent?
I think that was great. So another question that we have that I hope that you can speak to from the perspective of someone who maybe has applied to this program and an MBA, if they were accepted to both, why would you say that they should choose this one?
Well, it really depends. It's one of those psychologist answers. It depends. It might be better for that person to go with the MBA. And, it depends on the person and his or her aspirations and The MBA program here, or elsewhere for that matter, they're pretty well established. They're not new ideas waiting to be born. They've been born. They've been through adolescent troubles. They got married. They moved out of their parents' home. Then they moved back into their parents' basement. They've been through all these stages of life, and the MBA programs that I'm aware of are pretty well grooved into being the way they have been for 20 years. There's a certain kind of security and reassurance and track record about programs like that that can be very reassuring and can be very well aligned with the applicant's goals and comfort level with dealing with dynamic situations. The venture development master's program is so new that it doesn't even have any students yet. The first cohort has not showed up. The first cohort will, in a way, invent the program. We have a lot of plans on paper or on our hard drives about how wonderful this program is going to be. But it's going to be different than our plans on our hard drives when 30 brilliant people, all different from one another, come together and spend a year creating something that never existed before. So that's why I'm so high on the power of being a member of the first cohort, because not only will you create a venture of your own and find your way, as President Obama said, but also you will create an indelible path. You'll be blazing a trail that will shape the second cohort's experience and the third cohort and the fourth cohort's experiences, and teach us, your de facto mentors initially, how to fine tune. It's sort of like building the shelter at Taliesin West. Yes, you can build it, and then we're still going to have to adapt it for cohort 2 and cohort 3 and cohort 4. But those of you who are in cohort 1 are really going to be the trailblazers and pace setters and those who make real our imagined plans and aspirations.
Thank you for that, Chris. Yeah, I know that we are really excited about the students that we have already accepted into this program, and we definitely cannot wait to see what they make of it once we get started this fall. Another question that we have, Chris, that we hope that you can speak to from your extensive background teaching and serving as a mentor to graduate students. When you do mentor graduate students, what are the most common discussion items, and what is your opinion about research best practices at a master's level?
Okay, this is the $30,000 question. That's what it would cost to have somebody really walk this walk for a year. But mentoring graduate students, I think the most common discussion items, I'm thinking back over the 45 years of this kind of work, about 60% of the discussions in one way or another are about coping with the imposter syndrome. You probably know what the imposter syndrome, the brief description of it is basically people who are in fancy situations, accepted to a selective graduate program, or employed by a famous hotshot tech company. And then they start to think, well, it's pretty clear to me in my private self-examination that I was admitted here by mistake. I really don't measure up to my own internal image of what the qualifications should be for a legitimately accepted person in this program, or a real contributing executive or engineer at a fancy tech company. And one of these days, they're going to realize that. They're going to find, they being our HR or the executive vice president for engineering, is going to realize, hey, this person really isn't good enough to earn a doctorate at this university, or to be in this master's program, or to, you know, continue to be employed in Palo Alto. Well, of course, it's a fantasy, a negative fantasy about oneself, not feeling worthy or really up to it, and projecting onto others, your peers, that, well, they're much sharper than I do. They never have sleep deprivation as a result of worrying about what might happen, or not knowing exactly what to do next or what to say next. So mentoring is saying, well, that mental monologue of yours really is coming from hell. It's not really true. It's not coming from the angels. It's coming from hell. And they're trying to undermine your confidence and exaggerate the qualifications and calm of others. But the fact is that, as Winston Churchill once said, 80% of the world's work is done by people who aren't feeling very well at the time. And if you're not feeling very well in your graduate program or in your employment, that's no reason to give up or turn yourself in to the qualifications police. It's a reason to say, well, I'll do what I can at the way I feel today, and I'll probably feel better tomorrow. I'll feel different tomorrow. So anyway, that's a big part of mentoring, in my experience, is reassuring very gifted people that they're very gifted, and that they're going to have moments of self-doubt, and that those moments of self-doubt are not the first symptoms of coronavirus. They're just moments of self-doubt. And if you don't entertain them, they'll go away. Of course, the other extreme is mentees whose confidence far exceeds their capabilities. That's the narcissistic personality. I haven't had much success. I'm not a good match for people with that self-image. So I hand those off to somebody else who can better listen with a straight face to what those folks are concerned about. Have something to add to that or subtract from that?
I was only going to say that we think we have not accepted any narcissists into the program, and that everyone else is just extraordinarily lucky to have you as part of it, and to have your wisdom, as Brian Cheeseborough said, for cohort 1. An interesting idea. That's
great. No, I'm flattered to be part of this team. I'm feeling a little insecure about it, actually. I need a little conversation to regain my confidence.
Well, we are very happy to have you as part of the team.
Thank you, Jackie.
So we are pretty much out of time here, actually. I do want to just take a moment to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much to Cheryl and especially to Chris for being here and sharing your thoughts with us. We really appreciate your taking the time to talk to our prospective students and our admitted students. And we're really excited to have you to serve as a mentor to them once we get started here in the fall. Thank you again to everybody who attended. This is my contact information. If you have any questions about the program, please feel free to reach out, and we hope to hear from you and see you all again soon.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you all. I look forward to meeting you and seeing what you will create.
Thank you so much. Everyone have a great day.